Buckeye fans, we're back with some more Buckeye talk today on the Buckeye Breakdown podcast. Today, we're breaking down what the Ohio State offensive line is going to look like as we head into spring ball. A former friend of ours took to the media to make some good comments about our head coach, Ryan Day. And also, there's a little bit of a rule change that sparked from a game that happened out in Eugene in early October. So much to get into this morning, this afternoon, this evening. Don't even know what time it is here on the Buckeye Breakdown podcast.
We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown.
And welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Buckeye Breakdown podcast. Anthony Moeglin alongside my partner, Kevin Woidke. And we're midway through the work week here, Kev. We're trudging along here through the month of March, getting ready for some exciting March Madness basketball. That we got conference tournaments heating up. We got the bracket getting released next week. Obviously, this is a time of basketball in the sports calendar, but still plenty of Ohio State news to get into, some small stories, some big ones. And the main one today, we're going to be resetting the offensive line, a huge portion of the Ohio State Buckeyes, especially as we head into the 2025-2026 year. But, Kev, to start, we're not going to get there quite yet. We're going to go talk to an old friend of ours, Kyle McCord, the former quarterback of the Ohio State Buckeyes at the NFL Combine, coming off of a massive senior season where he led the country with 4,779 passing yards, and really in his time in Syracuse looked exactly like the guy that Ohio State wanted, but just kind of never came to fruition. He was asked about kind of his breakup with Ohio State, the departure from the Buckeyes, and Kev, throughout the whole season, it felt like there was a little bit of a riff between he and the Buckeyes. He was kind of always being a little cryptic about his former team, especially after they lost to the team up north. But he was able to clear the air and just talked about the respect that he had for the program, for Ryan Day, how he was rooting for the Buckeyes every week, and how he still has some friends over there, Ryan Day being one of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, I would too if I'm trying to save face and look good in front of.
There we go. I love it. I knew it.
I mean, I don't buy it for a second. If we don't win the national championship, he isn't giving us much praise. Like, that's just what the reality is. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm off base. I don't know the guy. Never got a chance to meet him. I just know he was throwing a lot of shade to Ohio State throughout the year and in his departure, and seemed a little upset with us. And then, maybe he's letting bygones be bygones. I forgot his name like 3 times this year. I truly, he's one of the most forgetful Buckeyes I've ever dealt with. But he's not been my cup of tea. I mean, he acted like he was this great quarterback. I mean, he wasn't that good of a quarterback. So I'll just call a spade a spade. This time at Ohio State, he wasn't that great of a quarterback. We needed an upgrade quarterback to get the potential we wanted to get to this year. And it showed. And he wasn't happy about it this year. But now that he's trying to get to the NFL and needs all the friends he can get to the NFL, whether it be Ryan Day, Mick Marotti, whoever it is, that's what it's a smart move. Whoever his agent is, it's a genius move. He's got to do it. Like, now that Ohio State is the top of attach your name to it. Oh, I helped build that program. I helped. Whatever.
Hey, when I was typing this in, getting these graphics set up for the show, I was hoping that we would get an honest answer out of you, Kev. Don't know why I ever doubted it, but that is exactly what I was hoping for. McCord went on to say, I didn't play my best football at Ohio State, and added that he knew he had the ability to improve into 2024. He certainly did so at the University of Syracuse. Just a fun little wrinkle that came out of the NFL Combine. Now, there was some big news that came from 2 weeks ago. Kevin and I on the pod talked here about the Rules Committee meetings that took place at the end of April. At the end of February, where all of the teams got together, ADs, whomever it may have been, to kind of look at the rules, see what they can improve upon from last year. The 2024 4 meetings sparked the coach-to-player communication, the green dots. This year, Kev, a big rule change that came from a game that all of us remember out in Eugene, Oregon, and Autzen Stadium. The proposed rule change will allow teams, offenses, to put game time back on the game clock if a defense intentionally has a too many men on the field penalty. Now, you think, where does that come from? Well, it comes from the Oregon Ducks putting 12 guys on the field intentionally on Ohio State's final drive to kind of thwart that Ohio State potential comeback and escape with a 1-point victory back in October.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great change. I think the next thing is going to be, I can sit here and tell you everything they're going to do. The next thing a team's going to do when they need to stop a team like Ohio State was, they'll just tell their DBs, hold them. Everybody hold the receiver. Don't let him move. Grab onto him, tackle him, bring him to the ground, hold him. Quarterback won't know what to do. Burn 8 seconds off the clock, and then we're right back where we started. So that's where there's got to be a rule where, similar to when the Ravens, if you remember back when John Harbaugh outsmarted everybody with that hold and then took the safety because you can't end it, but you can end it on a safety. I think if we're going to have people out there that are looking to exploit rules, they're going to do it. I could sit down for 10 minutes and figure out a way around every single rule if I wanted to, but I'm not a scumbag.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just
there's certainly loopholes to be found, and obviously Dan Lanning got one. I was just going to ask you, literally that play popped into my head as you were talking, because when I was back in college, we always used to practice those weird end of game, end of half scenarios where, all right, you sometimes see if there's 5 seconds left in a game, instead of punting the ball away on a 4th down, a quarterback will drop back and throw it as high as he can out of bounds because the clock doesn't stop till the ball hits the ground. Or the one you explained where you have the holdings on a play because the game can end on an offensive holding. So every player, 11 guys on the field, 1 guy gets the ball, everybody else grabs their guy and rips him to the ground, right? Because you can end the game on an offensive penalty. So there's a lot of those weird end of game scenarios that oftentimes you find loopholes. Mike Vrabel did one to Bill Belichick a number of years ago when he coached the Tennessee Titans. So the last one to get kind of thwarted was the one that Oregon pulled. And frankly, when I was watching that game, I remember vividly thinking like, oh, that was intentional, like immediately. And frankly, I was like, why didn't he just put 18 guys on the field, right? Because there's nothing against it. He put 12 on the field. It ended up working out for them. But regardless, there's a potential rule change coming, which I think would be a positive one, in my opinion. So something to certainly keep our eye on. There's going to be a handful more of those that'll surface from those meetings. Before we move on, just one more thing before we move on. Scumbag might have been a little harsh to do it. But I think in the NFL, if there's 12 men in the defensive formation, they blow it dead. Yeah, they do in the huddle. Kev, in the huddle. In the huddle. I don't understand why that isn't the case in college. That's one of those other examples like the NFL could do better with college where it's not a spot foul for pass interference. It's 15 yards like college is. But I think that is an example of one where it's like, okay, well, why – give them the option to put time back on the clock. Just blow it dead if you see it. I know it's hard to see live, but like if you don't see it live and you look and they're like, okay, they had 12 on the field, give them the chance to either confirm the play and stop the clock or just reset the clock, get them off the field, give them 5 yards, and then hit play when the ball is snapped. That's kind of where I think they're just like, they're covering bullet holes with Band-Aids, and it's like just suture the wound. It's a really good thought by you, because that would end the conversation totally. Then you don't even have to have a rule where you can put time back on the clock or whatever. Like, how about just call it if before the ball snapped, if there's 12 on the field, you call it. I would say I'd play devil's advocate that sometimes defenses don't huddle, so it may make it tough, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But regardless, you bring up a great point, and that's certainly a way that they could go. Never even thought of that. So there we go. Kev's got his thinking cap on today. I love that. I love that out of you, brother. All right, keep that thinking cap on, because we're resetting the Ohio State offensive line. This is a group that I think they got plenty amount of praise, but I think they were still underappreciated last year because this group up front was really the propeller that led Ohio State on their magical run through the college football playoff and into the title game, starting with Donovan Jackson going from guard to tackle, Carson Hinsman coming in for Seth McLaughlin, who had a season-ending injury, and then just Luke Montgomery towards the end of the year subbing in, not really subbing in, but getting into a guard rotation with Tegra and with Austin Saravold. There's a number of guys that got a ton of experience because of injury last year, and they're going to be the guys that Ohio State leans on in 2025 as they look to continue a lot of that positive momentum.
Yeah, I mean, those guys especially, I think you'll see some redshirt freshmen play a good amount this year if they need them. Having both tackles transferring in, one being a senior, the kid from Rice, the kid that I met this week, and the other being a sophomore from Minnesota. The sophomore gives you a little bit of time to build. It's a redshirt sophomore, so a true junior for that matter. This will be his third year in college football, but it gives you some time to grow there at the right tackle position. But, I mean, getting Luke Montgomery, getting your interior guys those snaps this year was huge. Giving Carson Hinsman another chance at center was gigantic because once Seth was gone, it was between him and Joshua Padilla? It would have been between those two, and I think Carson kind of solidified himself. He's definitely going to need to get those snaps up. He still has that problem. They're probably sending him to a snapping guru, or one of the 3 offensive line coaches they have to teach somebody how to snap. I mean, I met all 3 of them. They all seem like unbelievably. They're large human beings. Seem like great people.
Do they have the chop? Yeah.
Oh, they got everything. They look like 3 linemen. That's what's nice. I mean, they're just big.
There we go.
Yeah. And then you got, I mean, there's some other things. You don't know what redshirt freshman could turn out. I mean, no one expected Brandon Bowen to be starting. No one expected, and I was there, no one expected Michael Jordan to come in as quickly as he did, or Demetrius Knox to come out of nowhere like he did to start the next year. Like, who knows? Maybe one of the Armstrong twins starts next year or gets a lot of playing time due to injury. Maybe the Ian Moore, who's the only tackle. I mean, it's him and one of the Armstrongs, the only 2 tackles we have on our roster that came to us out of high school.
Yeah, and here's a question, Kev, just from your perspective. You were in the room a lot, not a lot. You were in the room. What's the vibe? Because offensive linemen are typically so close, but in spring ball, I mean, this is a legit competition, right? Everyone's fighting for their lives. They're playing for their opportunity to be the starting guard, tackle, center at the Ohio State University. What is the general vibe? Is it less of buddy like it is during the year, or is it still you have that camaraderie, but you guys know you're kind of fighting against each other for those 5 spots?
To each their own. I mean, I never saw it as that. I mean, I always tried to help out the young guys. Maybe it was to my detriment. I don't know. My mentality was always giving them as much info and as much guidance as I could, because spring ball's hard. Like, you're coming out of a high school program where you don't really do film. I mean, you don't sit down every day and watch what you did at practice the day before and get screamed at to the 10th degree for false stepping once. Like, I felt bad for these guys. Like, exactly. I felt bad because I was there. My latter 3 years, I was starting on field goal. I was doing well in school. Like, I didn't really have aspirations to go past Ohio State. Would I have loved for that to happen? Great. But I knew I was a walk-on. I was so underdeveloped physically in terms of strength coming out of high school. I kind of knew where I was at. So I was always there helping guys. They had questions, I was helping them. I don't know if some guys pulled punches when other people had questions. I can only speak for myself. But as far as I could tell, everybody was there to help each other, because it's such a hard thing you're going through anyway. Yeah. And you're going to need guys to be ready if something goes wrong. And with it being a team first atmosphere, you can't be putting people down just so you can start. Because who knows? It could be the first game of the year or third game of the year, like Brandon Bowen had, and his knee snaps, like his leg snaps. Like, you don't know what's coming down the line and what you're going to need to do. You don't know what these young guys are going to need to know how to do. So it's really selfish, and that's just not how they did it when I was there. And based on the coaches I've met in my time since leaving, it's not how they do it there now.
Yeah, and honestly, that's a testament to offensive linemen just in general, right? It's team first. You know, it's a position that gets none of the glory, right? None of the credit, but they're the guys who make it go. And it's good perspective that you bring to the table. So some awesome competitions heading into camp. A lot of guys who got great experience last year. And frankly, that whole room, all those young kids, you talk about the Armstrong twins, along with some of the younger guys, they also got 2 months extra of practice, right? So really good development, really good stuff that came from the championship run last year for those Buckeyes. So going to be really fun to watch how that offensive line resets itself. Now, this is all year long, Kev. This was a pro tight end podcast. We had G. Scott last year. We were the number one G. Scott podcast. And now looking in to 2025, Ohio State does one hell of a job and resets our favorite position. And I'll get into why I think this is so important, but brings in Max Clare to kind of headline this tight end room as we head into to next season.
Yeah, I mean, with a new OC in there, we don't know what – I mean, Ryan Day is still obviously got his hands in it. And you saw how much we utilized tight ends in the past with Cade Stover and all that. C.J. Stroud loved them. You don't know what Julian Sam or, for that matter, Lincoln Keenholz or St. Clair prefer, because each guy has their own. Like C.J. Stroud loved throwing the tight ends. It seemed like he loved to throw it to Cade Stover. And then he was the safety valve for what's his name? McCord. I think. Did he play? Yeah, I think he was safety valve for McCord last year. But that's like kind of what I think. And I think Max Clare brings a dynamic to the tight end room that we haven't had. I mean, since G. Scott. But G. Scott was, it was pretty evident that I was a big fan of him. I think he was kind of the heart and soul of the team, and it showed in that Texas game. No matter how much our Brendan, whose name is always on the podcast, but he's never on the podcast.
Clip that.
Yep, clip it in. Hey, I'll say it. You're going to talk all that us about G. Scott, come on the podcast and talk about it.
Then. Come face the music.
Yeah, but no, it'll be fun to watch Max Clare. I mean, Jesuit kid, love that.
There we go.
Went to St. X down in Cincinnati. That's delivered some unbelievable athletes over the years. I'm excited to watch it. I mean, you got Will Kazmarek back. You got Jelani Thurman back. I mean, it's just going to be rotating through. I'd love to see a 3 tight end system. I'd love to see 2 tight ends on either side, and then having another one at fullback and see what happens with that, because they all can block. I mean, I'm hoping Jelani puts on a little muscle, which I think he will, a little bit of weight to him, so that he can block a little bit better than he did last year. And then you got Bennett Christian, who came on last year. Kind of surprised he's back. Dude. I figured at the end of last year, not super surprised, but I love that he's back. But he put enough stuff on film that he could have probably gotten a good amount of money elsewhere. But that shows his commitment to the Buckeyes. Love that for him. But I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. I'm excited to watch. Yeah. I know I've been talking a lot because I'm a tight end guy, but I'm excited to watch it this year. And if we say tight end enough, maybe the algorithm will start giving us some Swifties. I don't know. But
tight end. We can get the Swifties in there, get the Kelseys, get that whole group in there. No, you make a bunch of good points. That room is going to be awesome, and the reason I think it's so important, I won't beat a dead drum here, beat a dead horse, if you will, but for young quarterbacks, you mentioned it. It is so imperative to have a good tight end. Young quarterbacks lean on their tight ends. They're typically the closest guy to them. They're typically the biggest guy on the field, and a huge catch radius. So it's going to be really important. Claire comes off of a year where he had 51 catches for 685 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, those are typically average numbers, but he did it on a 1-10 Purdue Boilermaker team, which was very impressive. He's going to be a really good addition. He's got the vote of confidence from a guy that we both trust on this podcast here, but Lathan Ransom said he was one of the toughest covers in all of the Big Ten last year. So he is now a Buckeye. It's going to be really awesome to have him. All right, we're getting out of here on this. We're talking week 1 the head coach that we're going to faced him in the semifinal last year in one of the better games you'll see that you saw all last season. Going to get another crack at the Texas Longhorns. Both teams will look fairly different. Ohio State much more different than what Texas will look. But Sarkisian went on Colin Cowherd yesterday and had this quote: "This is a great opportunity for both programs. Someone's going to win and someone's going to lose, but hopefully the team that doesn't win the game doesn't get punished from the committee by playing this type of game early on in the season." We touched on this earlier in the week, but I just think it's going to be a cool rematch of the semifinal. And Kev, it's going to have the eyes of college football on it, and you're going to have two young quarterbacks who are getting their first major action in college football. And it's cool to see that's kind of Sark's perspective on it, because he's been known to be have some hot takes around some stuff, but this one I thought was pretty cool.
I think he learned his lesson. I think he knows what happens when you give bulletin board material to Ohio State and how they utilize it. I mean, you saw it against Oregon, you saw it against Tennessee, you saw it against Texas, and you saw it against Notre Dame. Even an inch, give them an inch, like we're going to play man-to-man, or we wanted Ohio State. They give them an inch, they take a mile and a half with this stuff. I think that this is him being smart. I think it is him being like, you know what? It will probably be a very evenly matched team. So why poke the bear? Why get him even more upset? I said it last year, I'll say it again. If you want to beat Ohio State soundly, you need to do so under their radar. Yeah. You need to, if you want to upset Ohio State, you got to do so without giving them any reason to look at you. Mm-hmm. Indiana gave them a reason to look at him last year. And you know what? You saw what happened. Yeah. I mean, I have no explanation for the TN North game. I truly don't. Wow. It's you know what? It's this.
I mean,
the last 20 times they've played, person who rushed for the most yards won the game. Or 19 of the last 20 times. You know who won the game 20 of the last 20 times? The team that scored more points. I don't care what happens. Score more points than your opponent and you win the game. You could win the game 72-71. I mean, you saw it with the Rams versus the Chiefs. Everything went good or wrong depending on what side of the ball you were on. It was just crazy. Like, score one more point than your opponent, you win the game. Don't care how you do it. Don't care who does it. If Double T recovers a fumble and takes it for 45 yards for a touchdown, I don't care. We won the game. That's
look left. Hey, you're at home, wherever you're watching. You're at work. You're at home. Look left. Look right. If there's a hole in your wall, it's because Kevin's got you fired up. It's only March, Kev. We do have, I think, 7 months, 6 months, 5 months till we actually are playing some football. But you got us really fired up here. I think it's a good point. And yeah, I agree with what you said. Sark kind of playing it right, playing it politically correct. I think both guys who we talked about today are playing it pretty politically correct when they were talking about the Buckeyes. But we're going to get out of here on that. As always, appreciate you jumping in and hanging out with us today. If you could, hit that subscribe button, like, follow, rate, review, all those things. We really appreciate the support and you guys hanging out with us. Head over also to our website, si.com/college/Ohio State. We got you loaded with content there as we roll our way through March. So for my partner, Kevin Woidke, I'm Anthony Moeglin. Thanks for hanging out with us today on the Buckeye Breakdown podcast.